everyone, welcome to Beeler.Cast. I'm Rob Beeler, I'm your host, and really excited this week about the conversation that we're going to have, in part because I'm pretty much well known in the ad tech space and in the media space for being skeptical about blockchain and a lot of the things that are kind of going on in our universe these days. And part of that's because, again, it's something where I've looked at some of the applications around blockchain in particular as to whether that's the right place to start. Ad tech, as you know, is an industry where the numbers tend to kind of move around, and the idea of putting it all into an immutable database somehow to me never quite made sense. But we can get there. What's really exciting for me, though, however, has been this conversation that started between my guests and myself over the last number of months, really not thinking necessarily about blockchain, not even thinking about all the speculative talk about NFTs and whatever, but really about just how we could change the world, thinking about things in terms of humanity, thinking about getting media to people who don't have access at this point, and creating emerging markets that don't exist today or are just hard to get to today. And so what I'm hoping is this is actually going to be the first of many conversations, either with these particular guests, as Sunil and Maceo and I continue these conversations, but also that we'll bring in more guests to actually talk about this particular convergence between decentralized finance and media. So with that, I want to welcome my guests today, Maceo and Sunil. Maceo, why don't you give us an idea of who you are and what it is that you do?
Oh, great. Thank you, Rob. I am an entrepreneur, to sum it up in one word, and taking a fundamental value perspective towards entrepreneurship, which is trying to tangibly affect as many living human beings as possible in their day-to-day economic activity.
So you have a background in finance and business. How does one come to the point of wanting to literally affect that many people?
Great question. Well, I started in finance and here in Boston, and got a really interesting introduction to finance, operating on the corporate side in commodities and energy, and the opportunity to work with decision makers in the Southern Hemisphere who were owners of companies that either produced or moved physical commodities. And the commodity industry is quite interesting. It affects so many parts of an economy, from the producers of the commodity, which would be farmers, processors, which would be manufacturers, shippers, investors, and the like. And being involved in that gives you a 30,000-foot view of an economy, a region, cultures. Commodities will go back and forth across cultures. Sugar is produced in many places in the world. However, those involved in those industries can be very different. So that beginning allowed for a perspective, which really led to where I'm at today, going down that vein, operating in energy, and deliberately being an entrepreneur. Rather than operating inside of one of the larger corporate commodity houses. There's a lot of benefit to that. You can do very well for yourself. I would say that the adventure to be a commodity entrepreneur was worth the cost. And it allows you to see opportunities globally that you might not see.
Fantastic. So we're gonna tie back into that. Sunil, I've known you for quite some time. We've got a history together. Can you explain again where you're coming from and what you're focused on?
Yeah, I think I would describe myself as a strategy and finance man who found his way into the media industry when programmatic was getting going, to come in and help build RTV and all of that, and then sort of turned serial entrepreneur after that. And I think, I've operated in the media space and I've studied it more from a strategic point of view, from a technology point of view. I don't think I was ever an advertising guy, if you will. And so the next step was really, okay, let's take some of this technology. And, I consider myself actually a legitimate programmatic OG. I know that's a term that's thrown around because my teams have actually built things. I actually understand. I read the code. And the next horizon is really to take this technology that we built and apply it to real physical industries. So I'm premium coffee, and now we're talking about neobanking. My background is really in sort of finance. And the funny thing is, how Maceo and I met, it had nothing to do with business. We were just kind of in a social gathering where I was dressed in my hoodie and Maceo on a Sunday afternoon was dressed casually, and there was no pretext of business. And I overheard Maceo speaking to someone. I realized he's an incredibly logical human being, and we just struck up a conversation. We started talking about all kinds of things: geopolitics, economics, the future of the world, the opportunity in the Southern Hemisphere. It was really like 45 minutes in when I asked him, what do you actually do? And I had written the book in programmatic marketing science. We sort of started talking and realized that there's actually a real convergence point, or set of convergence points between what's going on in FinTech, crypto, media, programmatic. And by putting those things together, I think we've got a good thesis on creating synergy and opportunity for both of those sectors.
Yeah, it does seem like all of this is racing toward, again, new way of, again, whether it be media to advertising, but just how we do business. All of these new technologies and all these new kind of new ways of operating are all kind of converging all at once. And I think that there's going to be obviously a lot of advantages to first movers, right? People who see the opportunity and kind of move to that. And so, with that in mind, I'd love for you to talk through really the the project that you're currently, I call it a project. You may not think of it as a project. It's a little bit bigger than that. But can you talk a little bit about what you're currently up to?
Great. Well, it is a project. We'll go with that. And correct. There is convergence in this industry, and I'd say ad and media. We're seeing convergence in media also with things like Netflix and online streaming. I started off in the .com one days, and we were getting videos that were broken up and streaming slowly, and only dreamed of something like Netflix. And now that seems kind of passé. And now we're seeing another level of convergence through digital medium, which is the ability for people to engage in transactions themselves through IoT devices, through laptops or whatever type of technology they have. And with that technology spreading throughout the world at a rapid rate, for instance, our market is the Southern Hemisphere, which is what our project is. It is about onboarding as many human beings into a financial ecosystem that runs well, as they say in the industry, has low friction, allows people to engage in normal economic activity that they necessarily would have difficulty in, depending upon where they were born in the world. And that combined with what is already happening in media, and then now this burgeoning reality for humanity, where every human being soon will have the opportunity to participate in a well-run financial system, have the same data and access to information that someone in Manhattan does who looks at Bloomberg or CNBC. It's a free plug for them. And, it's all going to come through IoT device. So, what does that mean? That means that people are going to self-determine. Their lives are going to change. Many people, their lives is dependent upon their financial system. It determines what activities they have, jobs they have, meaning are they connected to only people in their immediate area? Or are they connected to people globally? Do they have a product, that is interesting, but people in their area, may not have a need for it? But if your market now is 5 billion people and you've got a unique product, that changes your economic reality. So our project is about speeding up as much as we can is many human beings who are underbanked coming into a functioning financial ecosystem and approaching it from a point of solving that problem, that question, and being agnostic in terms of the technology. And
yeah, so underbanked, right? So if I understand that, and again, please help me get there, which is, again, we take in North America, we take in the U.S. For granted that we can create bank accounts and we can participate in the financial markets, right? We can it's well, again, even without a bank, you could start getting into the stock trades, you can start to do all these things. That is not true for, let's say, the majority of the world. Is that a correct statement? And so what you're saying is that some of this technology that is kind of converging could allow for everyone to have access to financial instruments in a way that allows them to do things. Sunil, please.
One thing that I wanted to interject with here is, because we're talking about, grand strategy, we're talking about potentially technology and various other things. Just the human element of this, I think when we think about the Southern Hemisphere, it's so young. The average age in India is 28. The average age in America is 39. The average age in Europe is close to 42. And the average age across Africa is not even 20. It's, 19 point something. So I think, to me, and I know, Maceo, you operate on the ground in, various parts of Africa and the Caribbean. What I would like to learn from you is, what is really that qualitative exuberance of the youth? How do they look at new emerging technologies such as cryptocurrency, and what does it really mean for them in terms of their life vision?
Great question. The youth, as I've seen in the Caribbean, the African continent, and we can't wait to get to Central America and South America, are really seeing what we would consider as new technology as normal because of the youth. Right. So, we look at technology that came out when we were 18 or 20 something years old. The concept of, this is something new doesn't really exist because everything is new in your life at that point. So this is their normal. There isn't really an adjustment period to change an old habit. There is a desire to find what works best for you at that time. And also, this is a technology that is going in a logical step. We're standing on the shoulders of entities like Facebook, Instagram, the whole social media universe. Again, the convergence of media into technology. So that is translated into an expectation of more development, more innovation. If you look at the last 10 years, the path of technological innovation, and we say an average age of 26, in a region, well, that means that innovation started at 15. That is a major part of their consciousness. And that is their expectation that every year there's going to be something really interesting and useful that will come their way, that they will have a choice on whether to participate in. So I think the interest is immense. And also, if you look at the data and the trends, for instance, and then the adoption of IoT devices, we're looking at almost a 98% saturation of smartphones on the sub-Saharan African continent in 7 years. That's 700 million people.
And that's one of the things. Oh, I'm sorry. Continue your point.
No, I was going to say that's 700 million people who are a thumbprint away from engaging your media, your concept, your financial services. And that also means that the financial services are going to change. They're going to be taking a greater interest and a greater role in determining what financial service is valuable. Maybe people won't be looking at an ETF. that's based in Europe. They will be participating in financial services that affect their everyday life. Like, for instance, cassava in West Africa, or coffee, around the world. How are these technologies now going to create efficiencies? And, coffee is one of the largest commodities in the world that affects millions and millions of people, hundreds of millions of people. There's obviously going to be efficiency created, especially as people start to learn how to develop their own technologies. And that's what blockchain makes affordable. So I think that the interest is really high. If you look at the pure metrics, it's heading in the right direction.
So I want to go back. You hit a couple of key points I want to come back to, but I want to make sure for the audience that they understand a little bit more about this project in Aqua, what you are working on. This isn't its own Bitcoin. This isn't its own NFTs. We're talking about an underlying system by which, again, we can get more people to be able to participate and onboard more humans into the market for them to be able to participate, right? And so I kind of want to make that point only because just what comes to my mind, of course, and Sunil, building off your point of the youth of these markets, is if we think the adoption of certain technologies is quick in the U.S., in an area, in something where everyone is at that particular age, it's just going to happen. It's going to be and feel like it is overnight. And so I think the one thing that I want to start to make sure we are starting to kind of, connect the dots on is, so we're not talking about NFTs. We're talking about the system on which these NFTs can be built, right? That these can be transacted on, and again, allow more people to be involved in this. Let's connect that dot, Sunil, to media and how you see this as being an area that media companies need to pay attention to instead of waiting to see what gets built, participating in the actual building.
Yeah, and I think there's sort of the traditional media opportunity, and then there are media opportunities probably media companies haven't thought about, or many of them haven't. If we work off of the basic premise that media is about content and distribution, and then we look at what's going on across the broader Southern Hemisphere, I think we begin to understand. So let's look at some of the macroeconomics that are going on. Number one, let's imbibe once and for all. This is very important. India and China are more industrialized than America and Russia now in terms of manufacturing as a percentage of their gross domestic product, and it's not heading back anytime soon. Now, I think there's some misreporting that we get in our education system and our media, where what they'll do is they'll kind of show the economy of a country in US dollars, and you think it's a lot smaller than it is, but they don't use dollars, right? They're saving 20-30% of their money. We're talking massive national treasuries. And if you saw the news today, there was a free trade deal signed between India and the UAE. And that's absolutely critical. So it combines Mumbai with Dubai. And Mumbai is just a massive city. The economy is bigger than Norway. Everybody knows that. And Dubai has historically been one of the transit and trade and financial services, media, sort of, international hubs. This is part of something much larger. China has the Belt and Road Initiative, and India has, and this is a part of it, it is called the Arab Mediterranean Economic Corridor. So this is going to go through Saudi Arabia, through the UAE, Israel, to Greece, to Germany, other parts of Europe, and then, of course, through Dubai to other parts of Asia and Africa. And so what's happening along this corridor and other corridors is there are value chains going up. Value chains in agriculture is huge. So agribusiness, as Maceo mentioned, petrochemicals, renewable energy, manufacturing, capital being invested by multi-trillion-dollar superpowers, so we're not just talking about, venture capitalists. And so within this, you're going to need pools of liquidity. Now, some of those pools of liquidity will come from cryptocurrency. You're going to need new neobanking. You're going to need to be able to connect to the transactions that are happening in Dubai and Haifa and Greece and other parts of the world in Mumbai. and what people are doing in Africa, you're going to need to be able to convert currency, convert services, have pools of liquidity, connect people. And all this while another cascading effect is happening, which is the supply chains that are in China are now shifting to India. And the services supply chains that were in India are shifting to ASEAN, to parts of Africa. So where, you had the man with the Indian accent named Bob answering your phone, soon you'll have the man with the Kenyan accent named Bob answering your phone. And so there's a tremendous amount of economic activity happening. And all while the guys on Twitter, the crypto guys are saying, if India doesn't accept cryptocurrency, the economy will be ruined. Well, the economy is growing by 12%. And so, you've got massive across the Southern Hemisphere investments, trade corridors, value chains, the need for neobanking, and absolutely the need for liquidity and cryptocurrency. How does media play in? Media plays in two ways. One, anytime you have economy and commerce, you're going to need media to promote that economy and commerce. But there's an additional way that media can play. Media can actually take a position on the balance sheets. So if you have a cryptocurrency that's launched, let's say you begin accepting media as a product, or you begin accepting cryptocurrency for your media. Media is in a unique position to accept cryptocurrency because digital media costs virtually nothing to distribute. Now you begin to take a position on the balance sheet. You get cryptocurrency on your balance sheet. You promote the currency. You promote the currency's value. Suddenly people's income goes up and they start buying other products and services, and you promote that with media. So there's a complete convergence between media, fintech, cryptocurrency, and all the value chains that have been created.
A lot there. Please, Maceo, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
No, that's one of that. It's a lot of detail there, and it's all important. And he brought up a great point, which is about connectivity. What this connectivity also does, we call it connectivity as a service, and not leaving it up to just the whims of a few, or the luck of politics, and kind of waiting for things to hash out, and diplomacy just saying, hey, let's connect as many human beings as fast as possible in the best system and give them the tools to start them off, but make the system adjustable so that they can dive into it and improve the system themselves. And what that will do also in media is that now there will be hundreds of millions of people coming online who are genius creators. And, it will be YouTube part 2 and 3, and all of these kind of sites where are really just like you make a video and you put it up, and they've created some monetization scheme. But now people creating any type of media or art, and attaching to NFTs, which we see as just a mechanism of ownership. Okay? It's a really good mechanism of ownership for art and media, as well as physical assets. There's a movement of NFTs to start being utilized in kind of this legacy economy. As Sunil was speaking to, manufacturing and things like this in India and China, manufacturing assemblies expanding in Africa and South America. Well, now that we've got this connectivity, you're adding tools to that connectivity, you're going to start seeing natural economic activity, which is someone utilizing NFTs to place ownership on a product that they manufacture in Colombia, and then someone utilizing NFTs to do dynamic media commercials for this product, right? And they may be in India. So now you've got someone in Colombia and India coming together in a value chain, right, that is creating one component, one unit of value, but they're completely separated. 10 years ago, they would have had to have gone through an expensive company or known someone, at an agency in another part of the world. And now it's as simple as their choice of connecting. Just how people are surfing YouTube and other channels, they're going to be surfing the world to find economic activity that they can directly participate in.
I want to tell you why you saw me smiling when you started to talk, because if you think about the language around the metaverse and the way that Facebook looks about how, and they use the language about connecting everyone in the world, it's as if we're all going to be in this shopping mall walking around with our new little avatars for the body perception that we've always wanted and how great that's going to be. And you hear so many people talking about what is this solving for? Do I really, like, in other words, at some point I have to take the goggles off and I have to get back to the real world, and what you just said, right? Just in comparison to that pitch is someone in Colombia that created something is able to transact with someone in another part of the world because there's an underlying connection to them with efficiency, right? Because again, you could possibly try and do it today, but there's mechanisms in place to actually, if anything, hinder that. And what you're talking about, and again, I think this is the part that I want everyone that's listening to kind of start to connect these dots, is that level of connectivity across the world around, I'm gonna say it, around real stuff really starts to actually have meaningful impact than whether I'm going to have blue fur today or pink fur on my avatar when I go and sit there and hang out on the, whatever that is, that picture that's been drawn. Sunil.
It's needs versus, vain desires. And, you've been in the conversations where everybody is a crypto expert. What's Dogecoin doing? What's this doing? What's that doing? That's speculation. I've been studying the Southern Hemisphere for decades, and Maceo has, and we've operated there. And this is why this is interesting, because for us, it's interesting. But as an investment, when you're getting behind needs and real economic opportunity, that is sustainable. NFTs, weird creative NFTs, that's fine. It's the year of the NFT. It's the year of mobile. It's the year of, whatever it is. But it's real needs, economic growth, massive job creation. We're talking with this free trade deal, they're saying 1 million jobs are going to be created in India. Think about that. 1 million jobs.
And just building on that verse. So I think the point you say about speculation has been along the lines of what I've been thinking about. Again, the what dominates our world around NFTs and all this particular piece is it's kind of the new form of gambling, right? It's the new lottery, right? Let's see if I can pick the right coin at the right time and suddenly put $10 in and make 1,000. Like, how awesome would that be, right? Compared to actual economic system by which we could sit there and transact more.
Absolutely. But, speculation is necessary too. Again, and this comes to the mission statement and purpose of this project, which is, it is about being useful. So speculation has use, in terms of hedging, back to the real world, commodities and such, or you could say insurance, right, on your business venture, whatever it may be. But again, much of the industry, and writing what Sunil says, has, maybe rightly so, but has been really focused on low-hanging fruit, like creating a product and getting people to speculate on it. And that allows for the improvement of that technology, working out the kinks, also spreading the knowledge and participation of that technology. And they've kind of focused on that. We believe that all of that should be in Aqua. And so there should be speculation. There should be productivity. There should be environments where there's also economic activity based upon knowledge workers. So there are business models where you're not necessarily producing something that is a tangible product, some edible commodity, or, you're not just speculating, but they may be adding some type of intellectual value, technology product. And that still requires a value chain. You've got inputs, you've got someone who's going to work it, you've got marketing, you've got customer service, and these people there'll be far more opportunities for people to connect. And what we hope is any type of economic activity. And if you look at what economic activity does, you kind of break it down to its root, it is all human activity. The minute you wake up, you're engaging in some type of activity. You make a choice of value on, do I eat breakfast? Do I exercise? Do I go to the park and enjoy nature? Do I work in my farm? I do a mixture of those things. And, Aqua would be a home for, 4 billion people that they can just voluntarily come into. And it is agnostic on technology. We're going to be receptive to all systems that are put out there, that people are developing. And it will be agnostic to industry. And a lot of what you see in the blockchain now is if you go into, it's really divided, and it's still converging, but some places are kind of like an NFT universe. And it's interesting when you go on there, you're right, you see all this interesting artwork. And I love art myself. I was lucky to have parents who collected a lot of art, but it can be, it's a bit of a niche, right? And then you have to go somewhere else to get into another area. And, they're doing this currently on top of an economic system, but it's a legacy economic system and they don't quite jive, right? So the legacy economic system is paper and legacy banks. And in the North, you have this thing called KYC, Northern Hemisphere, KYC. Southern Hemisphere people will never pass KYC. The systems are different. You're not in the database. They don't know you. You don't have, government numbers the way they do. And, Aqua is going to kind of push all of that to the side. It's going to allow anyone to operate. You will be able to find whomever you want, and people will come because initially in the world, operating in Aqua will add immediate value to their lives because they will now be able to operate with the efficiency you would, whether you're a well-to-do person, again, in Manhattan, I'll use Manhattan again, anywhere in the world. And people are practical. People are intelligent. Once they get into that, they will improve on that. So we'll see connections in business that we never even thought.
And since my audience is really kind of media oriented, advertising oriented, I want to build off that because again, I think that proposition alone is a reason to think in that direction. When I think about the media aspect of it, and Sunil, I want you to help me make a couple connections here, right? Which is, and I'm thinking less about the content creators that will now suddenly have a means by which to create and do. So again, sorry, my point being is that based on what Maceo just said, new content creators will now have a platform by which to be compensated for their work. So that's just going to lead to amazing new content. And the reason I'm doing that little preface, and you heard me kind of babble a little bit there, was because I'm thinking, of course, about the large media companies that exist today that are thinking about these markets and thinking about how they're going to succeed. Now, for one, they should probably be looking for content creators there. And again, things like Squid Game and whatever, there'll be other examples where you'll start to see how something suddenly kind of goes global, right? But let's talk a little bit more about the fact that some of those companies struggle to actually break into those markets. One, they don't speak necessarily the language or understand the culture. But this economic system suddenly, I think, opens up the ability for them to start to think about this, right? Because the means by which to get, and we'll use Netflix without, as again, kind of building off that, they really can't do a successful subscription model, kind of to your point. Like, the systems don't really work well for that. If it's subscription, if it's advertising, if it's whatever these things, those systems, the efficiency isn't there. But what I'm hearing is that, I'm sorry, I'm kind of hopefully not taking your point, Sunil, but because I'm on a roll here, buddy. But there's a piece of this of almost thinking like, to me, Google today is a discovery engine. That's where you go to find things. to these people that are coming up new with this kind of new financial underlying piece, there's almost an aspect of it could be the new discovery engine, because what do I have access to in an easy enough way that I can participate and be a part of it will become a new way to sit there and get content discovered, created, built, and that whole ecosystem starts to take it. And that's as far as my mind can take it. Sunil, you're good at this. What am I missing, or what's the bigger picture here?
Yeah, that's a great setup. And I think it's a combination of things, because the subscription model works in some parts of the Southern Hemisphere. But then, as we extend further, there are going to be other ways to do it. But if we look at Netflix, you mentioned, has 5.5 million subscribers in India. Amazon has 22 million. What's the difference? Amazon has invested in local cultural content. So Netflix is known or they're known a lot for their sort of international English speaking content. So there's a gap to be closed, and 22 million is nothing to sneeze at. But then when you look at Hotstar's got 46 million in India. What's the difference? They've got cricket. And cricket, by the way, the Indian Premier League in a month and a half gets more in sponsorships than Major League Baseball gets in a year. And you're talking about the world's fastest major growing economy, right? So cricket in the due course of time will become the greatest, sponsorship and reach sports vehicle on the planet. It's the second most played sport. So there's room to work with the sponsorship model. I think what it really comes down to, and I'll talk about the other piece, it comes down to cultural sensitivity, real cultural sensitivity. I don't mean the politically correct stuff. Now, I'm a part of the Indian diaspora. I'm a person of Indian origin. I'm a U.S. citizen. I've lived here a long time. But I'll tell you, we understand the code words, and we understand the way that the Western media covers the civilizational culture of India. There was a very prominent newspaper when India sent a spacecraft to Mars. They showed a cartoon with, the Indian man with a cow on a leash standing outside the International Space Club. I'm not going to mention the newspaper. They apologized. But if you read those kinds of media outlets, the sort of biases have just gone underground. Now, at the end of the day, that's a commercial issue, because if newspaper A in the West or media company A in the West continues to do that and rest on its laurels, then that's an opportunity for media company B, without doing any of the crypto stuff, without doing any of the blockchain stuff. If you simply begin treating people with respect, there's a huge amount of economic activity and opportunity. Now, the other part, places where the subscription model isn't going to work yet, or not necessarily places, but segments of the population who maybe don't have access to that opportunity. But you think about their participation in a system like Aqua, where, people in a very economical way can participate within the system, and they can, get on board with neobanking at a very low cost. Once you start doing that, and let's say, you've got coin within the system, media companies can begin to accept that coin. Now, there's no cost to you because you're getting an audience. But as you begin accepting, the coin goes up in value. Now you bring other, marketers and commerce opportunity into the system, and you essentially create a market for your own subscription services. And so the ability to literally create value in currency doesn't exist so much in the Western Hemisphere. So the opportunities are tremendous. We're talking about 3 billion plus people, and the connectivity to mobile phones. I mean, India's probably got more than, 1 billion people using mobile phones. You're talking about a middle class of 700 million people who are saving like 25, 30% of their income, sending their kids to private schools. But because our economists love showing, or the political scientists want to show that the average person is, making $5,000, they don't use dollars, they use rupees. It gives them a cost advantage in export. So let's really start thinking about the real economy and the human beings and the use cases. But the scale is enormous.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So I want to start to think about what's next. So Maceo, this is this project, and again, I keep saying that in a funny way, just because again, it's so big in terms of its scale. The project doesn't seem to be the right word, so we're gonna have to work on that. I'm gonna have to stop calling it a project. But Maceo, what you're currently working on, what's your focus right now? What's next for Aqua?
Great. Well, what's next is basically what Sunil was talking about is we are launching this ecosystem, and we see ourselves as help and a parallel to existing cultures and governments around the world, where we're looking to just onboard people into the system, which will give them a base level of services that are going to immediately improve their lives. That's the first step. And that's coming out rapidly this year in 2022. And our role is to really just empower people to engage in normal, healthy economic activity and stay out of the way. Our role is not to determine culture, political issues, any of that. Our role is simply almost the role of what cash is supposed to do. It's allowing two people to engage in commerce. And to be a digital form of cash now, you have to be more than just a coin. It's got to be in a protected ecosystem. So, our mission is to protect this ecosystem. We watch people operate. We continually improve it as we see it. And we're going to be very aggressive in expanding the knowledge base of developers and the culture of wanting to develop in the Southern Hemisphere. And that's, that real tough, hard code. I'm not really a great coder myself, to people, utilizing systems that are easier to use to create content and be a home of innovation. So all that's coming out this quarter, and we're having great partnerships that we are discussing. And when we come into an environment, we say, hey, how can we help the human beings in this environment live a better life through having better economic activity?
You take that point you just ended with, and Sunil, your point about respect, globally. And again, this, I think the thing that we've learned is that connectivity does lead to empathy when done well, right? When done correctly.
Yes.
And so I think that there's hope to do that. And it's hard to take from that level where we are toward my next question, but I have to kind of ask it, which is, as two individuals who are watching this, and again, the two of you keep my reading list long and interesting, but long. You do guys do find a lot of things. What should people be doing or reading or thinking about, and what maybe should they not be in terms of connecting this dot? Because again, I think what I was trying to do is say at the beginning is some of the speculation talk is getting in the way of building things. And Maceo, I think you kind of putting me in my place that speculation has its place. So agreed. But there is a piece here where I'm trying to think through to you both of what you've said is the mission. Where do I start to pay attention to? What perhaps do I not put less attention to? Any thoughts?
I've got a thought. I think, there's a lesson that media companies learned over the last 10 years or so. Most of them were late to real-time bidding. So that's a use case that we can draw upon. And if you really think about what's going on in that industry, the middle players, the middlemen have all the power. We can say whatever we want publicly. I saw an article that the Trade Desk released something, and it's to cut out middlemen. The Trade Desk is a middleman. Who doesn't understand that? So I think the important thing is to begin doing now. It's about organizational culture. I was within the holding companies, I was within Havas, but all the holding companies, I think, faced a similar challenge at that time when we were discovering this new thing, which is you're trying to respond to this technology. And I had come over from IBM, so I was, from a real tech culture. And the biggest challenge when it comes to strategy is your own culture. You've got a media culture, you're trying to deal with technology, and you've got to find ways to inculcate a flywheel, protect that politically, and say, look, these people are going to have political immunity for a couple of years just to study this thing. Go now. They can read my book, by the way, but I would say read about international economics, what's going on in the Southern Hemisphere, read about these trade deals, read about the value chains. The technology, you can always study the technology. It's not about the technology. It's really about the opportunity, the culture. And to me, strategy is not planning. It's not theory. It's really about understanding a paradigm. Follow the thought leaders. The thought leaders will lead you to the paradigm. They'll tell you the limit that you can't break. Once you figure that out, break that limit. That's what you have to do.
Fantastic. Maceo, any last thoughts?
Sure, yeah. Well, looking at the industry to help cut through the noise is, people should start looking at where new money is being created, because that's what pure crypto does. It's allowing human beings to literally create money as a product that before you needed to be part of the treasury of a government or at a certain level in banking. Now, anyone with some technology can create something that is representative of money. And start looking at which technologies are going to connect previously unconnected businesses to these new people who have money. And they're evolving. So, there are whole industries of people, and, products can be considered money. They have these products, but they're going to be technologies now that are going to connect people in the world to things like, heirloom agriculture, unique plants that may be a niche that was untenable to utilize traditional trade to sell. But now you can find that special fruit that before you couldn't, that only grows in a certain part of the world. So I think from a practical standpoint, for those who aren't developing, who are looking at the outside and maybe looking at opportunities, look at technology and say, hey, these people have something really interesting. These people have money. This seems to be a bridge to bring those people together. Just by, being a part of that, investing or supporting it, now you're part of that. And it's something people can digest.
Well, I want to thank the two of you for, again, an enlightening conversation. And again, it's in some ways it's fascinating to kind of take things up to the level and the scale and the size of this conversation. I really, really enjoy in doing that. And, I'm going to ask the two of you to help me continue these type of conversations, right? Because again, I think that there's an aspect of, yes, my day-to-day is on the ad tech side, and I deal with all the middlemen that Sunil spoke about, and trying to figure out ways to get information to flow freer, to help people who create content make more revenue and make that a viable system, but to also just, again, to expand that further throughout the world. There's just, I'm going to look to the two of you really for the analysis on what it is that we need to be paying attention to. So I'm looking forward to kind of working to create something with you guys to see if we can keep the conversation moving forward and hit on all those points of humanity that you touched on. Less the technology and more the humanity is, I think, going to be something that's going to kind of lead the way.
Yeah, Rob, that would be our pleasure. And, let me thank you as well, because you're the only guy in our space who's thinking in the media space and, providing avenues for this kind of broad thinking. We've got to go beyond clicks and conversions and really take this technology, which, initially it was created on the basis of speculation, as Maceo mentioned, but we can apply it to, human beings and opportunity and creating wealth across the world. And so your background as an operator helps us bounce that off somebody who can kind of challenge us a little bit as well. And so always a pleasure chatting with you, and thank you for this conversation.
Great.
Yes, and thank you, Rob. We look forward to it. I'd like to leave with, I think we're heading into a golden age of media, right? More humans participating in media, more humans who have access to capital that they can engage in various economic activities, and especially media, means that you're going to have more product and content. And, the world is a rich place for art, especially the Southern Hemisphere. I mean, we all know that. We can go to any museum or even especially in contemporary product, right? So I think it's wise to have continual analysis of what's happening. There's no way to predict what's coming out. There are people right now creating products that we haven't thought about that are going to connect humans and industries and content that we haven't thought about. And also, there is a lot of noise, so it needs fundamental analysis. So hopefully we can do that here.
Yeah. We started the conversation about the convergence of all these factors on the technology side and the digital side. And we just ended with a convergence of people and culture and that piece. So I think that's a great place to wrap up. And yeah, looking forward to it. Hey, if anyone has any ideas on this discussion and want to add to it, please reach out. And looking forward to the next Beeler.Cast when we get to talk about these topics. Thanks, everyone.